So in his office, as the Bible's open to Proverbs 22:1, let's see the sign on the front. His desk when he was so covered with. What he'd do is like print off 100 copies of an article of what what Tebow did in the restaurant, for a customer, and he would just show it to everybody. And so so the desk was a little bit different than it looks right now. But still had the Rolodex on there. Did y'all see that?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like you scroll through your Apple contacts, and then you have the favorites on the top.
Yeah,
Post
that's
on
the
top.
favorites.
Yeah. So, but that's.
I think we heard that there were some
names
good
in there.
stories from some of y'all up in that office.
Yes.
So.
We have some good ones. I'll tell you one of them. So I would bring up lunch to him, and so it's hard for him to get all the way to cafe and back. And by the way, I asked him. I said, why do you still come here to the office? Why are you doing this? 80, 90 years old. He said, for the free lunch. So I'd go down and get lunch from time to time and bring it up to him. And so we had the plasticware and the little clamshells, and so we're having the lunch right there. I pull up that side chair. You saw where his chair was behind the desk, and I pull up that blue chair on the side, and we'd eat lunch. And I noticed that I would throw away the clamshell, but he'd keep the plasticware. Did y'all see that?
Yeah.
Y'all can't stop me if I start telling a story. But he just kept that. He kept that. And, do what?
We like hearing your
It's neat
version.
to hear it from,
From me.
we heard it
primary
from
source.
Jimmy, but to hear actually that.
Good.
From you,
Yeah. So that's.
You
Did
hear
he tell it
validated
right?
stories.
Did he tell it right?
Well, no, you ain't finished telling me.
He would just wipe it off
Yeah.
and put it in the desk. And I was like, from a stewardship mindset, not growing up Great Depression, just never throw anything away. But it's a kind of something you see modeled, and you see it wherever you go. You see it modeled, picking up trash on the way into restaurants. Just that humility and kind of focus. It never. That type of mindset just never left him, and it was a big model for us as a family member. And being a part of Generation 3, we were raised in a total different environment than they were, and that's what's hard. And I think about raising my kids. I mean, I had opportunity for whatever education I could get into. I had so many different opportunities, and you talk about the responsibility or shoes you have to fill. I feel like you have to fill. If Granddad did so much with that. It's like I've started with this, and what am I? What the expectations of what I'm going to do. And when I thought about it from a personal standpoint, it's like that's overwhelming. I mean, there's just no way I can measure up to that. And so for me, it's been a learning process for myself, and being comfortable in who I am, and who God's called me to be, and what He's put in front of me. And so it's been a process for me. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry.
Thank you for asking questions. It helps.
Where did Sherwood get all of those characteristics? Was it from his parents, or like a mentor, or?
Great question. So I don't get to talk very much. Talk about his mother, of course, with the Bible verse and preparing him. She said he never saw her with her eyes closed until he saw her in the casket, because she was the first one to wake and the last one to sleep at night. Mm-hmm. She was a hard worker. She had to support the family when his dad became basically depressed during the Great Depression. One of the many thousands and thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people that got, couldn't even, get out of bed at times. That was his dad. So his mom became the person that taught him work ethic, how to take care of a family, how to. One of the things I remember him saying was, he said that he tried to sell chicken feet here at Chick-fil-A. Can you imagine? So he brought it down here to the cafe, and when he wants to test something out, he just brings it to the cafe and has us eat it. But he brought chicken feet, and one of the things that's interesting is like they rent a boarding house, so it's 2 meals a day and a bed to sleep in for $7 a week. So if you're traveling, you could get that at the Cathy household, and his mom ran that household. And his job was shucking corn and shelling peas, was what he said.
Nice.
But one thing, when they had dinner at night, after they had already fed the boarder, so they get the prime chicken breasts, the meat. They sometimes will get the wings or something like that. The kids would get the wings, and she would eat whatever's left, and so it was chicken feet. But he watched his mother, and she's like, she just made it such the biggest deal, like she was like getting the best thing ever. And so she would eat those chicken feet and whatever was left over and just say, man, this is the best meal, and so grateful. And he saw that model, and so he has a whole different view on chicken feet than the rest of us do, because that was what was modeled in his home.
Yeah.
So so got it from his mother. His father was really not somebody he looked up to, and was not a positive influence on his life. He would wake up on Sunday mornings doing his paper routes, and it would be raining outside, and he would ask his dad, hey, can you just drive me so I can do my paper route and not have to get soaked or whatever, and he wouldn't do it. And so I think there was probably some resentment and some pain that he had there, just not having the father figure. So the person that stepped in was his Sunday school teacher, a guy by the name of Theo Abbey, and he was just a guy, a father, a husband that took care of his family, took care of his boys, and had the capacity to kind of take care of Truett and be there for him. He would actually take the paper routes, and put them at key points so that he wouldn't have to carry all of them or go all the way back. He could just keep going on his route. He would go with the car and drop that off. But somebody that modeled great, a parent, a male that was there for you, somebody that cared about you, cared about his spouse, and saw a good, healthy relationship. He would go on vacations with them or a weekend away with them, and just kind of saw that model. So Theo Abbey was somebody that taught him not only from a husband and father standpoint, but also from a biblical, kind of biblical world view that really helped him with that mindset and growth as a young person, as a young man. So he had that hard work ethic from the time he was little. So he won all the sales contests, or the newspaper sales contests. He would keep he would keep his clients the most, because he would deliver them behind the screen door, or on y'all probably read that, or on the rocking chairs out front. Keep it away from the dog if you had a dog. He wouldn't just haphazardly throw it in the bushes or whatever. But he won a lot of trips that way down to Florida, and he was a good business person in that regard. And the stories about him selling Cokes, I've heard this story. It's like, as a little kid, he couldn't even say his own name, so he would have something written on a little card, say, hey, I'm Truett, and would tell the price of it on the card and all that kind of stuff. Wouldn't even talk with them. Wow. But he just had that demeanor, and he'd break off ice or the broken ice from the ice truck. He would use that to chill the Cokes down in the summer, so that second mile service that not many people had there, but ice cold Coca-Cola. So that's a little bit about him. I'm trying to think of anybody else that was an influential person in his life. He's had a few friends over the years. Dr. Carter, his pastor, became a lifelong friend. Y'all might have saw the picture of Dr. Carter. He was on the motorcycle, the Harley. I don't know if y'all saw that. It's kind of in the back. But they called themselves the Holy Rollers, the motorcycle. And so grandmother finally told him he can't ride a bike anymore after he was like 78, 79 years old. He was a wild man on the wheels. He'd run people off the road. He was something else. But Dr. Carter was somebody that really was his pastor, prayed with him through decisions, somebody that was grateful for him. Oh, and then his wife, my grandmother, Jeanette McNeil, Kathy, she worked at revivals and shared the gospel and wanted to know how to do that better, because she sang and did that, and did vacation Bible schools and all that for kids, and she wanted to learn how to share the gospel better. And so she went to New Orleans Baptist Seminary, and which no females were at, and so she was one of the first to go and do that and to learn how to study the Bible, share the gospel, all that kind of stuff. And then she came back to Atlanta, and they were childhood friends, but she left and came back to Atlanta, and she said, and I married a chicken man. But her influence on our family and on this business has been tremendous. This kind of the spiritual backbone of that, the daily study, Bible study, the scripture memory, all that stuff, and encouraging to remain closed on Sundays and through those difficult times when feeling a lot of pressure to do it. And she was there to help him and guide him, and Generation 2, which is my Uncle Dan, my dad Bubba, and Aunt Trudy, in raising them in a home that was like that. So that's had tremendous impacts on our family and on our business from the biblical worldview, the principle standpoint, and values. So that was a long answer. I'll be short.
Thank you.
Looking at that like family business mindset, like a lot of us are friends. We may not be. I guess we're family, but yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
How do y'all? So we were just talking earlier. John said y'all went on a vacation with 56 or 50, however many,
54, yeah.
54 family members. How do y'all separate that business? And I'm sure there's Chick-fil-A talk when you're on vacation, but are there intentional things that you do during those times, or even just when you go home and eat dinner?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah, so from a family business standpoint, we've learned that it's really important to just have family time together, which is fun, playing, getting to know one another. You can talk business because I talk about my work, but it's not like it's not on our schedule to say, hey, we got to do this
Right.
business issue. That's strictly forbidden. Doing emails and phone calls, all that
Right.
stuff is
Yeah.
not allowed during that time, unless you go hide, because the rule is if you see somebody doing it, you can throw their phone in the
Nice.
water.
Nice.
Which is a little bit tougher these days because a lot of them are waterproof. You have to throw it way out there. So that's part of one of the rules. So we do have like a Gen 3 council that helps plan all that now. Our group of 21 of us with the grandkids is 28, so a majority of us from the 54, 48 of us are Gen 2 and Gen 3 and Gen 4, so we do majority of the planning of that time. But it's strictly fun, and to do that and create memories together is really important. We have other business discussions at other points,
Yeah.
and we have an intentional weekend where we talk about family legacy and values. That we go back to the farm and do that as a big group too. But we have to get very intentional because Gen 2 grew up around one dinner table with my grandfather and grandmother.
Right.
They had all the business and values discussions around one table. And you think about this, it's tough for even this room to get around one table. They had all that with the small group. The Morrison's family wanted to buy Chick-fil-A. You know Morrison's?
Cafeteria?
Morrison's cafeteria. What would be equivalent to
K&W?
Yeah.
K&W? It's like a K&W type deal. They offered to buy Chick-fil-A for $1 million. And I guess it was just the Dwarf House back then. But my Generation 2 remembers him coming home and putting that before that little table and then praying, asking them to pray for it in that decision. He basically said, all the issues that go on in the restaurant is exhausting. The people issues, the stuff that goes wrong. He said this would it does take a toll on family. It was significant, and he said a lot of those problems would be solved if we had this amount of money and we could do it in a different way. And they prayed about it and talked about it, and they said, no, we want to stick with it. And Aunt Trudy said, can I get back to my homework now? So,
That's great. That is great.
you're gonna say-
I was gonna say, to tag along with that, it's a little bit hard to word, but as you are born into a family like the Kathy family, and even like with Dan and Bubba, and as it goes along, obviously there's honor and respect on the name and all of that involved. How is it? Do you think it's just the family, like the family values that you talk about, that are instilled in you as a kid, that prevents you from becoming like, oh, who am I? Like, as you are so high up in this company and your name is known, how do you prevent that from like getting to your head?
Pride can well up in
Yeah.
us in at a moment's notice, and I think for Granddad modeled humility, and so it's not about positional power; it's about personal influence. And for our group, I think we constantly have to remind ourselves. It's just daily focusing on what Uncle Dan says: who we are and whose we are. And if you think about walking out of the room with who I am and whose I am, helps.
Yeah.
Whose I am, I'm God's. I'm a beautiful, wonderful child of God. I tell that to my kids. You're a beautiful, wonderful child of God. So just reflecting on that, and that I'm first of all hit among anything, and then I kind of reflect on who I am, and knowing and reflecting on that before I kind of go out a day and reflect on that is helpful for me to do that. And God created everybody, every person. I was just in Africa a couple weeks ago with John on the Care for Age
Y'all
trip.
have some good pictures.
Yeah, have you been to?
No, I just saw y'all's pictures.
Yeah, safari.
somewhere.
Well, we did a safari, but the main part of our visit was to go visit with a program called Care for AIDS. Basically,
Yeah, that's awesome.
a woman, you know a little bit about it?
I just know from Kylie, like
Yeah.
how active she is.
And she's the one that encouraged our family to get
Yeah.
involved with it. And so we, as a whole big Generation 3 group, 21 of us, voted that to be our ministry for the year. And we're learning how to make decisions together and do all that. So we have a process for selecting a ministry and that we can get involved with. And so Care for AIDS was that. My sister went, my wife, and I took my oldest son, who's 6 years old. I mean, going to a place overseas, and we were literally walking through slums where I have an acute sense of smell, but my son really does. And just the overwhelming smells of just raw sewage and little piles of trash being burned, and just animals and all that kind of stuff. Just it was overwhelming.
Sensation overload.
Yeah, and we were called Mzungus. We were white people walking through there. And so my son Turner, he's like, he finally said, I can't do it. And he said, they're trying to touch my belly button now. And he said, but touching arms and seeing blonde hair, and that most of the kids and haven't seen a white person, and then most of the adults, if they've seen a white person, they've never seen a white kid, coming through there. So it was overwhelming. But we got to spend time in people's homes and seeing women that have, mostly women, what I was surprised about was seeing guys involved in this Care for AIDS program, but women that have basically been ostracized from their families. There's a stigma attached to AIDS there that you're unclean and the lowest in society, and so they just get pushed out of their families, out of their work, anything that they have going on. You imagine trying to provide for a family. They have to put their kids out in the street, and so especially an orphan prevention type system that they have. But we did home visits where we got to visit with them. They have two local people, one that helps with nutrition and physical needs, and one that helps with the spiritual kind of who I am, whose I am kind of questions, and helps them give them worth, pour into their life in that regard. But to see that happening, and a group of them, they do 80 at a time over a 9-month program, and we saw 80 of them graduate through this program where they learned nutritionally how to take care of themselves, the spiritual aspect of self-worth, but also they got to learn business skills. So we went to tie and dye, which is tie-dye class, basket weaving. They went to financial classes, class on how to run a business and personal finance, and marketing classes, but they get all that training. And so they walk out of there with sense of self-worth, with a healthy life of that you can live with AIDS, and you just have to be intentional about it. And then the business skills, relational kind of counseling skills, and it was incredible to see the life change that was going on with the people out there. And so when we sell chicken sandwiches, you're impacting not only your community and the lives of the people that work in your restaurant, but you're impacting the community at large with a positive influence, and schools and other people you haven't been people with, but across the nation and around the world, there's impact that's going on. I just want to let you know that you're part of something that's bigger than yourself, and it's an incredible opportunity, and I'm just grateful to be able to do this with you. So thanks for asking.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question.
No, we did. Absolutely.
Two questions since
Yeah.
our time's wrapping up. What you're responsible for, but two, I think sometimes because we sell chicken a lot, we don't know the resources that are outside of just the Chick-fil-A restaurant. So what resources do we have as a team to tap into as far as WinShape? What's the other one?
Chick-fil-A Foundation.
Chick-fil-A
LifeShape.
LifeShape. So I just think those are kind of like the stepchilds that never get talked about.
Y'all know about the college scholarship program?
Yes,
Do you have any winners that have
We
gotten
did.
this year?
we had 4.
4 or 5.
At least 4. So Granddad never went to college, but he was all about education and helping others do that. He had 19 doctorates,
Honorary.
honorary doctorates. So education, youth are a big part of it. So Granddad loved the having foster kids. Said, you don't have to call me grandpa, but those do get more for birthdays and Christmas. I have a lot of foster cousins, I guess you said.
So with WinShape, all of that is provide like all those resources we have access to. So there's what kind of things going on in WinShape?
So there's marriage. There's kind of the WinShape marriage where you can talk about premarital counseling. You're about to get married, for those about to get married or just got married. You have, of course, now we have WinShape Homes for those that live in Georgia. There's a way you can get into the fostering program. We can help counsel people through that process. There's the camp program, WinShape Camps, for 6 to 16, I think, or 6 to 17.
Through seniors.
Yeah, and pre-seniors
Through senior year in high school.
through senior year of high school. What else? There is a college program, so that for not full scholarships, but partial scholarship to Berry College up in Rome. That. So that is an umbrella of a number of different organizations there, and then so that's under WinShape, and basically WinShape is about shaping winners. That's not the name.
Okay.
LifeShape, about shaping lives. I guess is what my Uncle John and Aunt Trudy kind of came up with. But that is basically there's a program called Impact. And so for those that are looking for a kind of a transition year between high school and college, to kind of refocus in on, I mean, you think about going to college, you just get pushed in all different directions if you don't, have a firm foundation of, knowing who you are and whose you are. And that it's an opportunity to really get to learn that type of stuff and focus on what you want. And think about long term. It's not about just my education, going for my education, doing the best I can to get a career and all that kind of stuff. It's thinking about, all right, what am I going to be like as a husband and a father? Let's think long term here. What are the decisions I'm going to make today and for the next few years at school going to prepare me for? So there's the LifeShape program, and then there's LifeShape, kind of international, where you can go do a lot of the trips that, like the Care for Age trip, where you go partner with different people across the world. So there's team members and operators that kind of do that experience, and operators have done that with some of their leadership teams and taken just to have experience and international experience. What you go do is you share the serve leadership. Nigel, have y'all done that serve leadership? You share that with government leaders, with other business leaders, and they eat it up.
So it's actually through this is why that's what we talk about. So quick story in a serve. So I'd heard Chick-fil-A talk about serve up front in a seminar forever. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest, there was probably 5 years that I knew the word serve, but there's not a chance that I could have told you what SERVE stood for. Mm-hmm. And then I realized that's their way, that's their step into some of these countries to talk business, but then to talk more. And I thought, all right, if it's good enough to get our feet in the door in countries where Christianity isn't welcome, it's probably a good enough model for us to start learning. So that's how serve became relevant in our store. It was a lot longer than I'm sure Dan was hoping it would take. But
well, and then you get to the point and they get deeper, and when they soak that up, they're like just taking notes, and then you can share with them. This is actually servant leadership. Actually comes from a principle, from biblical principles and values, and you can share. And this is part of where all that comes from. It creates really cool opportunities to kind of encourage and share with others.
And what's your current role? Last business consultant was the last I knew.
So I came home from being an operator out in California to doing a business consultant role. I went back for my MBA and went into the consultant role, and worked with the operators up north. Mm-hmm. And what was north then, and it's now Midwest, north now. And then I went to hospitality. We had in marketing, so it was kind of hospitality and service design team. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you've ever had experience where you were told no or redirected. One of those challenges that came that you look at as an opportunity, as Granddad said. Y'all were there this morning. I made plans to work at Chick-fil-A and be a father. That was my plan since I was little. And now I feel like I'm nailing it. But when I was about to graduate from the University of Georgia, my undergraduate, I was about to go work in marketing for Chick-fil-A, tell the Chick-fil-A story out west. I thought no better place to tell a Chick-fil-A story in a place that you can snowboard and surf in the same day. So out in California, so that was kind of my goal. And they implemented a rule that as a family member, you have to work outside the business for 2 years before you start on with a role at Chick-fil-A. So that helps out with the pride and humility piece a little bit. It gives you an understanding not outside, but that you can make it on your own.
Right.
And that was my experience was, and it's a little sketchy on when they implemented it. It was when John and I were graduating that they implemented the rule. So like, you've known about this for 5 years. I was like, what? And my older cousins didn't have to go through with this, but they did it for me. But so that was part of it for us.
What did you do? in that 2
I
years?
went and worked at a high-end resort industry because we were just learning about second mile service.
Yeah.
And so it was $800 a night to stay at this hotel, Montage. And so I was like, the stuff that I was learning, I was like, our people and our operators, I was like, we could do this for $8 a meal and literally blow people away.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be unmatched. And I got so excited. I was like, this is just how you treat one another. This is, you treat others the way you be treated. You treat others the way that Jesus treated us. I was like, this is easy. I was like, I say it's easy, you know. When it gets busy at lunchtime, you're in Christ, you're learning a new IPOS system. I mean, you know. But yeah, you treat other. Yeah, you know. Your granddad said, courtesy is cheap, but it pays great dividends. That's what kind of.